first I would ask, is social media working for you?
Right.
And what about it is working?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not working for you at all, then that's an easy, well, just don't do anything that's not working.
Yeah.
But if it's working for you, we don't ever advise people to leave social media if it's working. But if it's not working for you, either because it's life draining or because you're just not getting the engagement or growth or sales or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish there, I would ask, what are your goals? Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Sandy Cooper and Mary Kay Tiller.
Yes. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2025.
Yeah. This is a great episode to start the year on.
It is. We're talking about social media. And if it's working for you, staying with it. If it's not, other alternative paths you can take, basically.
Yeah, these two authors got rid of social media completely, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes. It's a very interesting subject, but I know a lot of people, myself included, are trying to cut back on their social media use. It's either that or I'm going to have to file charges against my phone because the slander coming my way from my analytics is not appreciating at all.
Called out, huh?
It's a little bit. Yeah. So, but it was a great interview.
Yeah, it was. They had a lot of interesting ideas, and we talked about how it feels to leave social media and the fallout, kind of how you have to deal with it, because a lot of our lives are connected now. You've got to find a workaround. So we talked about all that.
Yeah.
So
it was great. Yeah. So what's been going on with you?
I feel like do you feel like it's been like a month since we've done
Well, I think it has.
Pretty much, because we actually took a real break.
We did
for
2 weeks. Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks, which was really good. And we did Christmas, we did some travel to see family, and then I had time, and I'm not doing any creative writing. So I was like, I will do all these other things that I always want to do, but I never have time to do. So I did another season, super short, of Mystery Books podcast.
Oh, good.
And just 6 episodes. That's all ready to go up. It'll go out this year, probably mid-January.
Yeah.
And just some other things like that, clean some things out. And,
good.
And I went and looked. And in this episode, we talk about podcasting as another way to connect with people, another way to reach out. And I don't focus on Mystery Books podcast that much. I do a short season or a bonus episode every once in a while. And I went and looked, and for the last 7 days, Mystery Books podcast has gotten 200 something downloads.
Yeah, wow.
So, I mean, that's something that I really don't spend that much time on, but it kind of exists out there for people who are looking for me and like that format. So I guess I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
that's great. That's great.
So I did some stuff like that, and that has been about it. Just hanging out with family other than that.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. Just family, kids. Yeah, we had a great Christmas. Lots of fun. No major meltdowns or anything. We did a fun thing with my parents. We took things from their house and gave them to each other, and to see if my parents would notice. They did not. My dad kept saying, "I got one of them," and he would
need one of these.
He went twice to try to find the thing he had, and he was like, "Oh hell, I can't find it." And then,
how long did it take for them to figure it out?
There are 30 something of us. We had all finished opening gifts. And I finally said, "So, Mom, can we keep these things or should we put them back?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, and then I pointed out the little nativity that someone had given me and my sister, and she was like, "What?" And I said, "Yes, it's all it's on my TikTok. Well, I think all platforms. I think I put it on there, but it was hilarious. And in fact, my son's fiance didn't know we were doing that. And afterwards she said, "I kept thinking, why is everybody so excited about these gifts that look like they've been used?"
It's a new family tradition.
But Alexa gave my sister my mother's reading glasses that were dirty and a little crooked. And my mom, when my sister put them on, my mom went, "Oh, those are so cute."
Oh my goodness. I love
Hilarious.
that.
It
I
was
love
so
that.
fun. We had a great time, and
Yeah.
the new year has started, and I am, doing some writing, and I've got 3 goals. That's all. I don't like New Year's resolutions. I kind of balk against them, but I need to walk. That's just I need to walk at least 6 days a week. And I want to write 4 or 5 times a week, and I need to go to bed. I mean, like, I need to go to bed by 10:30 or 11. I haven't.
I thought you were pretty good at that.
No, I'm terrible about staying up. Terrible. And I'll get to watching a show, and then the next thing I know, it's 1 o'clock, and Chris goes to bed like at 9:30, 9 sometimes, and that's just too early for me. And so 10:30 or 11, I can do that. I just haven't made it. I did make it by 11:15 last night, but still.
So you're saying you need an accountability partner.
Yeah, I'm working on that. So that's it for me. I am trying to stay off social media and stuff, but that's just something I'm personally working on. It's not like a big thing.
Well, it's a good thing you're not into K-drama, because those are horrible for going to bed. Like, so easy. And that next episode just starts and it's like, oh, but I want to find out about if they actually met.
Right.
Did they meet at the coffee shop, or did they miss each other?
Right.
So, yeah.
And this is going long, but I have to tell y'all, if you have not watched The Kings of Tupelo, oh my gosh, it's a documentary. It is nuts. It is nuts. It is the most Southern thing I have ever seen.
Is it Netflix?
It's on Netflix. Yes. Okay. Let me pull The Kings of Tupelo. It says an Elvis impersonator's conspiracy theory sets off a feud that spirals into an attempted presidential assassination. It's crazy. I mean, like, some of the things they say and do, you're just like, are they serious? And you realize they are, and then you're just laughing. But it's not funny, because it's like these people's lives. It is just the craziest thing I have seen. And like I said, it's set in Tupelo, Mississippi. I mean, it happened in Tupelo, Mississippi. It is the most Southern thing I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it's just crazy. So if you get a chance, watch it. It's like totally thing. But anyway, that's my day. We have an announcement, because we're starting our 5th year, y'all.
We are. This is 2020 in January was when we started. We've done 4 years of this podcast, and I didn't even notice this. The episode that went out, the last episode in December, was our 250th episode.
Oh my gosh.
If you're not counting like the supporter episodes, just regular episodes. So this is our 251st episode. Wow. So we totally blew by that milestone. Didn't even realize it.
Yeah. As we do.
We're always.
Yeah. We're the most. Yeah. I know. There are people making big, do big things. We're like, oh yeah, that happened.
But 2 weeks later, we'll figure it out. But we do have a new supporter actually in December, Cindy Rios, and
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, she chose the cat emoji. So thanks to Cindy and all our other continuing supporters. We really do. We appreciate y'all so much. And you can support the podcast and get access to previous support episodes in the Slack group, which has been pretty quiet, but I think it's like everybody's been out of their normal routine, and we're going to get back,
including us.
Yeah, we will get back to recording some supporter episodes. And and we also have a survey, what your thoughts are on guests, on episodes. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So it's our 2025 survey. Tell us what you're thinking. And thanks to everyone who texted us back before Christmas for the organizers. We chose the winners and sent those off.
Yeah. And listen, we've been doing this 4 years. Like, we have interviewed a lot of people, 250 episodes, 251 episodes. We need some suggestions. We want to know what I want to know, and things we can talk about, authors that you would like to hear from, industry professionals you'd like to hear from, topics, whatever. If you want more just me and Sarah, if you want less of just me and Sarah,
all that. Know.
Just let us know. Just let us know. And we do really appreciate the sponsorship. I mean, when you sent me my portion of the sponsorship, I was like, oh, that is so fun. It just really does tell us that you love what we do and you love the podcast and you want us to keep going. So appreciate it.
And it does help with the cost of all the software we use and all the expenses that we have. And so, it's very encouraging. And so we appreciate it. And, you know, we've had some corporate sponsors in the past, but we've decided that's actually a lot of work to get them coordinated and set it up. And then we have ad reads. And so we've decided probably going forward, we're just doing
sponsorships.
You know,
supporters.
Listener supported. It will be a listener supported podcast.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, we should probably get on with the episode because it's really good. And you guys are going to really, I think, take a few things away and it'll definitely make you think for sure.
Yes, it will. So here are Sandy and Mary Kay. Today, we are really happy to have Sandy Cooper and Mary Kay Tiller here. How are y'all today?
We are so good. Thank you for having us.
We are so glad you're here. We'll get Sarah to read your bio and then we'll get started.
Sandy Cooper and Mary Kay Tiller are writers who felt trapped by social media, believing it was the only way to grow their audience and share their work. Years of chasing the algorithm left them feeling anxious and exhausted, so they ditched their individual accounts in search of life-giving and sustainable alternatives. In 2023, they co-founded Writing Off Social, a movement for female Christian writers who want to grow and nurture their audience without social media. Through their top-rated podcast and their courses, they challenge the current cultural narrative and empower writers to discover alternative pathways that play to their strengths and yield a better ROI on their time, energy, and money. Sounds fantastic.
Wow. Well, let's get into these questions. I'm curious. As a slave to social media.
Oh, that's funny.
They've let me off for this hour so I can do the podcast. But I got to get back on in a minute.
Yeah, it's very kind of them to let you do this other things.
Exactly. So tell us, how did you get into writing, Sandy? We want to hear from both of you on this, but Sandy, why don't you take it first?
Sure. So I have loved writing my whole life. You know, as a child, I was like the one writing poems about my boyfriends, and you know, and I always wrote poems and put them in people's birthday cards and things like that. I can remember I had Teen Magazine, and I would look at the Dear Beauty editor column, and I would think, I need my letter in there. Like I was just like always trying to think, like, how can I get my writing in front of people? Diagramming sentences was fun for me. I just got a lot of really positive feedback from teachers and then in college professors, and, you know, just got good grades in the writing stuff. And so I never really thought that I would be a writer necessarily, but I knew that I liked it and that I was good at it, according to people. And people always say, oh, you should write a book. You know, people always say that. They don't even know what they're saying when they're telling people to do that. But I would get that a lot. But it really wasn't until 2005. I had lost my first child when he was 9 months old, and I lost him in 1998, and people kept telling me I needed to write a book. And one of my friends sent me some information about a writer's conference. I didn't even know what a writer's conference was. And so I went and I did everything they told me to do. I didn't know what a book proposal was. I didn't have anything. I just knew that I could write and that I had this story. And so I went to my first writers conference in 2005, and I sat across, you know, book editors and publishers for the first time, and was shocked that they didn't roll out the red carpet for me, because my whole life I had been getting straight A's in writing, you guys. And so I was like, why are you not offering me a book deal? But what I left with was not a book deal, but a lot of information and knowledge about how to be a writer.
Yeah.
And it was really empowering, because one of the things that I learned how to do was submit things to magazines. And so I started doing that. I had, you know, really small kids at home, and I was writing in the cracks of time. And so I started submitting. I had a couple things published in small publications and received like $25 checks or, payment in copies. And, I'd get up my 5 magazines in the mail and it'd be like, yes, I was so excited.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until 2008 when I started a blog and that just really, it was consistency. It was, I found my voice. Yeah. I found an audience, and then that led to 3 self-published books. I never did get that book deal, FYI, but I am now self-publishing happily. So
very good. Very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. And gosh, I mean, yeah, after you go through something like that, the thing you want to hear is somebody say, you should write a book. You're like, I'm barely getting dressed.
That's right. Exactly. Like, what do you mean I should write a book? You should write a book.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How about you, Mary Kay?
Yeah. So one of the funny things about Sandy and I is we always joke that we're a lot like the same person. And I feel like the more we get to know each other, the more I'm like, you did that? That is so funny. I did that. So I actually was the kid growing up that wrote poetry too. Hilarious, Sandy. Yes. And I had a poem published in our high school's quarterly newspaper one year. I guess I was a junior, and seeing my name and my words printed just was invigorating. And I was like, well, that's an amazing feeling. I would love to experience that again. But I really didn't write again until I was in college. I got to study abroad in Florence for a summer, and I started a blog to share my adventures with my family and friends. And that was really the first time that I had multiple people telling me, did you know you're actually a really good writer? Like, you should do that more often. And so that was when the writing bug kind of got under my skin. But it took me a whole decade more to get serious about it. I had started and stopped a series of blogs. I mean, I have like Blogspot in the cemetery of blog spots. There's at least 20 of them that have my name on it. But I turned 30, and on my 30th birthday, I had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. And I thought, this is the exact right time to get serious about writing. So I started
to do that.
Yeah, newborns. I'm telling you, they've got some crazy creative energy that comes with them. And so I started a blog, joined a couple writing communities, learned as much as I could, started sharing my writing on social media. And a lot of my first work came from feature writing with various magazines and different things like that. So that's really how I got started. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been working at it ever since.
That is great.
That is interesting. And I had the same thing when we have 2 kids. When my second child was born, I'd always wanted to write. And I thought, okay, it's not going to get any less busy. If I'm going to do this, I got to do it now. I got to go ahead and start. So it's amazing that seems like such a strange thing now. When I look back, I was like, I was crazy.
Right.
What was I thinking?
Right. Did I not have enough going on?
I know. Yeah. Well, we like to ask everyone, what is your definition of success? Mary Kay, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah. So it's kind of evolved over time. When I first started writing for years and years, my definition of success was specifically being traditionally published. That was like the mecca, the mountaintop for me. But a lot has changed, and most significantly over the years, what's changed is my relationship with social media. I know we'll get into this and talk about it, but when I made the decision to leave social media, I had to rethink everything that I knew about writing. I had been taught that if I ever wanted to be traditionally published, I had to have a ginormous following on social media. And so to leave it felt like closing the door on my ultimate dream. And therefore it felt like a massive failure. But as I have left and found new ways to grow my audience and to share my work with my readers, I've learned that success for me is really just doing what I'm a Christian. I have a lot of faith. And so what I often say, just doing what the Lord has put in front of me to do, that to me is a definition of success. It's not my job to bring the numbers, to get the book deals, to get the speaking opportunities. My job and my definition of success is showing up every day and doing the work.
Ah, that's a great answer. It's a great answer.
What about you, Sandy?
Well, I'm going to give the great part of her answer as well. We did not compare notes before, but we are really, really good friends. And so we probably will have the same answers for a lot of these things. But yeah, for me, I decided 20 years ago when I just felt like I couldn't, I was just up to my eyeballs with kids, and my husband, I was supporting my husband building his work. And I was taking care of our home and taking care of our children, that I couldn't make success be anything but just being faithful to whatever God has given me to do. And so I too am a Christian, and that is I've just determined it's my only measurement now. Just if I feel like God is leading me to do it, then I do it. And if he doesn't, then I don't. And if I'm faithful to what he tells me to do, then that's all the success that I need.
Great answers. Great answers. And I think that's interesting because, not all of our audience are people of faith, and Sarah and I aren't. But I think it's interesting for us all to see each other in a way that we can all relate to, because the fact is that we all have a measurement, that we want to strive to. And so, if it's not a measurement of, what God has for us,
right,
it's something else. It's something we've set in front of us. And so, we can all understand that.
Yeah.
So I love those answers. Those are great.
Well, and if I may, I think, the main thing that it boils down to is understanding what you can control and what you can't control. I think
Absolutely.
that desire to be traditionally published, or to have those numbers, or to have, the speaking opportunities, that's largely out of my control. What I can control is what I show up and do. And so it's just helpful to have a mindset of like, okay, what is actually in my control to do? And let's make that the definition of success.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That is such a good point right there.
Yeah.
We have talked about that a lot.
Especially when you're making plans and goals, because if you can't make some things happen, no matter how hard you try, no matter what steps you follow from whatever expert, some things just you can't make happen.
Nope.
That's very good. Very wise.
Yes. And I'll add too, that it's not that we don't set goals. It's like we are setting goals all the time, but our goals are they're very thoughtful, and they're very intentional, and we're not just shooting at whatever is the next shiny thing, which is it's very hard not to do that. We understand that. And so, what Mary Kay said, actually. She's so smart.
Well, what do you wish you'd known about writing and craft, Mary Kay?
Yeah, I think I wish I had known that writing didn't have to feel like content creation. That it can feel cathartic and exciting and meditative and freeing. And if it doesn't feel like those things, if it feels forced or rushed or contrived, which is what a lot of my early work felt like, because I felt like I was primarily writing on social media. Even though I had a blog, most of my writing was on Instagram, and then I was reposting to Facebook. And it felt so forced to show up every day and have something to share in a little, 140 word quip, and I just wish that I could go back to my younger self and say, you don't have to write like this. Like, you can write the things that you want to write. You can write longer form. If it feels forced and rushed, then it's not life-giving, and you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah. The format sometimes seems to dictate what we can do, and we sometimes have to get out of that. What about you, Sandy? Do you have anything to add to that?
I would say, well, first of all, I feel like I'm still learning so much about the craft of writing. So, when I saw that this was one of the questions, I was like, ooh, I feel like I still have a lot to learn. But I think one of the things that has shaped my writing the most, and I wish I would have done it sooner, is really getting my writing in front of other eyeballs. Yeah. Not just people who are like, yay, Sandy, everything you write is so great, but like real people who are qualified to skillfully critique my writing.
Right.
I just wish I would have done more of that early, because I just feel like I missed a bunch of classes that a bunch of other writers took. And I was like, dang, like, you're so good. How did you get that good? And then I realized it's probably because I wasn't putting my writing in front of the right people and receiving feedback.
As someone who did that, let me tell you, it's not that fun.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't do it. I wanted to.
You have to get up your courage to do it.
Our listeners know our story, but my story, but like I had never written. I mean, I told a lot of stories. I did stand up. I did a lot of things, but
I love that.
I have terrible grammar. And so when I started going, I joined a writing group and then I went to a critique group. And for 6 months, they did nothing but kick my butt. Right. I mean, like 1 week I got hit for run-on sentences. I went home, thought I fixed it. And then they got me for sentence fragments. I mean, like I cried, but I waited till I got in the car every time. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So, but it was great because it taught me to write. And,
That's right.
But it was not fun, not a fun experience. But
we all have to go through that. Well, what about marketing? What do you wish you knew about marketing?
So marketing is our jam. Sandy and I, we would not have said that 2 years ago. And starting Writing Off Social, we realized that we actually have a lot to say about marketing. And I think what I wish I had known about it was, and this is no, shocker, but I just wish I had known that I didn't have to use social media, that there was actually a ton of countless really alternative life-giving options that actually play to my strengths and provide a better return on my investment, and that I didn't have to start out and be on social media if I didn't want to be.
Can't wait to hear more about this.
Yeah.
I would say, quick follow-up question. You said play to your strengths. So do you feel like there's a personality that maybe does better not on social media as much? And what would you think, or kind of summarize that?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I was just before I came on here listening to another episode of Y'all's, and you had on Maddie. I'm not going to say
Dalrymple. Dalrymple.
Yes.
Dalrymple. I'm not going to say it right either.
And Michael LaRon. And he said multiple times something that I think is something we say in a different way, which is, your personality can play, pick a platform based on your personality. And this is our way of saying that. Like, pick something that plays to how you are designed. If to your question, are there personality types that don't do well on social media? I don't think it's as much an issue of personality type. This is strong language, but I'm going to say, I think social media is an equal opportunity life sucker. So like, it's going to just like take your time and give you anxiety and make you depressed, no matter what your personality is, just because of the way that it's designed. But I do think that I think as writers, most of us would prefer to be focusing on our words and like deep, meaningful thoughts and sharing our good stories in meaningful ways. And I just think dancing in front of a video doesn't play to your strength as a writer, because you really want to be, I'll just speak for myself. I really just wanted to be sharing my words and my stories and not pointing to bullet points.
What about you, Sandy? What do you wish you knew about marketing?
Yeah. So obviously the same thing that Mary Kay said, but also I didn't understand the power of collaboration. I think that when I started blogging, it was 2008, like I said, and there was a whole crop of bloggers that were starting around that time. And I was rubbing, elbows with them at writers' conferences, and we were following each other's blogs. And one by one, I saw them eventually get book deals and then eventually become best-selling authors and, start doing the speaking circuit. And that was not happening for me. And I now know, especially since doing Writing Off Social, I now know that what was happening behind the scenes is these bloggers were linking up together, or someone with a gigundous platform was pulling them under their wing and sharing their work and sharing their audience with them. And I have like specific people in mind who we all came up at the same time. And that's exactly what was happening. And I didn't understand that. Again, like I had a newly adopted, I too started my blog with a new one. I had a newborn. It wasn't newborn. She was new to us. She was 1 and we adopted her. And so I had a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 1-year-old when I started my blog. And so I didn't have the luxury of time to do a lot of collaborating. But if I could go back and do it again, I would have made time for that, understanding the power of that. And that's now when we lead students through our course, it's one of the biggest things we teach them is collaboration isn't just an alternative pathway to social media, but it's a posture you need to take no matter what you choose to do outside of social media. You need to be working with other people. You need to be sharing each other's work. You need to be getting in front of each other's audiences. It's the only way you're going to grow.
I mean, like my author superpower is networking. And it is definitely how I was able to have success very early on, is because I had those things happening, the collaborations, people sharing, things like that. So I totally agree with that. Well, Sandy, what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
I think my biggest assumption that I made, that I alluded to earlier, was that if I wrote a book proposal and gave it to acquisitions editor, that they would offer me a book deal. Like I had no idea that they wouldn't. I honestly didn't. I would, because of just getting good grades all the time in writing. I just didn't know that. I didn't know what I didn't know. I also was shocked when I went to this particular writers conference. It was put on by a group of women, and all of them were writers, and all of them were already published writers, but many of them were also taking advantage of their own publisher appointments at this conference. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I really thought that once you got a book deal, you were in. Like, you had to get past the gatekeeper, and then you're in publishing land, and you could basically write your own ticket. I had no idea. I had no idea what the publishing world was like. So I was wrong. Everything was wrong that I thought.
Well, what's the most important lesson that you've learned, Mary Kay?
Yeah, it's similar to what Sandy shared earlier, but it's a proverb. I've seen it attributed as an African proverb, but Google is inconclusive. But it's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. As I look back over my writing career, I have realized that all of the accomplishments that I am most proud of and that I am most amazed by are things that I've accomplished in collaboration. So writing off social with Sandy, I have another organization and ministry called New Mercies for Moms that I've created with my friends Terry and Jill. My feature work early on was with my friend Ronnie. And like none of that would have happened if I had to do them on my own. And so they were only possible because I linked arms with other creatives. And so I think I've learned that collaboration is complicated. There's nothing easy about working with other creatives, but it's also incredibly powerful.
I've noticed that too. Even just like doing this podcast, I knew if I did it by myself, podcasts that are solo hosted oftentimes don't last as long as the ones that have a partner.
It's exhausting.
And then with like collaboration for promotion, it is much easier if you have several people coming along with you to share the word about it, to do the work to get it ready. You're right. It can be more complicated to work with multiple people to do something, but there's so many benefits too.
Right. Sandy, what's the biggest change you've had to make in your thinking? I mean, besides social media. Clearly.
Well, clearly. Well, and I think that it was really more the root of why I left social media, which has been the biggest change in my thinking. And that is that I do not have to do everything that everyone else thinks I should be doing. Because that was a really powerful narrative in my early writing from like 2008 to 2019, when I took a 1-year social media break against the advice of everyone that I knew who was a writer and successful at it.
Right.
For that period of time, I just did what everyone was telling me to do because I wanted it to work. And I thought, but the thing I used to say to myself is, every job has a portion of it that stinks, and social media is just the part that stinks in my job. So I just have to do it. I just have to do it because everyone says I have to do it. And now I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's just wisdom over time, which is also age. I don't know. But I just feel like I don't have to do anything that sucks the life out of me, period.
Right.
I just don't have to. And that has been a huge mindset shift for me.
I love that. I love that. Because, I mean, that's true. I mean, it could be social media. It could be anything.
That's right.
Could be dealing with people you don't want to deal with. I mean, you know, it could be anything.
It could be anything. That's right. And for me, that did translate to social media because that was the thing that everybody was saying during that time period that writers had to do. Right. And they're still saying it largely, but we're a growing movement of people, of writers who are saying, wait, I'm not doing that anymore. Right. And what else can I do?
Well, if you were starting over today, is there anything you would do differently? You want to take this one, Mary Kay?
Sure. Yeah. I think if I were starting over today, I would skip social media entirely. And I probably wouldn't even do a blog. We've been learning a lot about Substack lately. It seems like a really fun alternative to social media. It is social media-ish, but we could talk about why it's different. We talk about it on our own podcast a lot. But I think what I would do is I would start a Substack, and then I would probably develop a few speaking topics that I am passionate about and an amazing freebie to go with each of those. And then I would try to go on a podcast tour and promote my Substack. I think if I could do it all differently, that's where I would start if I was starting from ground zero.
Yeah. Good summary. What about you, Sandy? What would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah. So when I first read this question, I thought the question was if I could go back, what would I change? But I wouldn't change anything. So the short answer to that is I wouldn't, because it got me where I am right now. Even though whatever. I know more now. So I would, But if I had to start over today, literally, I'm a new writer, don't have anything, I would do exactly what I'm doing right now, which is I have a Substack newsletter and I have a podcast. And so those are the two things that I have learned play to my strengths. And I wouldn't advise, and I'm talking to myself as if I was coaching, because Mary Kay and I do this, we'll talk to writers in this exact position and we'll take them through a series of exercises and questions and training to get them to the point to figure out what plays to your strengths and what sucks the life out of you. And so I would never advise myself to do any of the things that suck the life out of me. So for me, writing is my first love and podcasting would be my second love. Speaking is a little bit harder for me, energy level wise. And so I would start with a Substack newsletter first, and I would get that up and running, and then I would add podcasting onto it, and I would do them in conjunction and point them to each other, which is exactly what I do now.
Well, what advice for someone wanting to reduce time on social media? I mean, what's the advice you would give? Because, the majority of our authors are fiction authors. So it's hard to come up with a topic, or, you know what I'm saying? So what advice would you give?
Do you mean if we were going to do a Substack or
or if we're just wanting to get off social media, how would you advise a fiction author to do that and still build their audience and connect with their audience?
I'm going to let Sandy go.
Yeah. Okay. So, first I would ask the fiction author, is social media working for you?
Right.
And what about it is working? If it's not working for you at all, then that's an easy, just don't do anything that's not working. Yeah. But if it's working for you, we don't ever advise people to leave social media if it's working. So my first piece of advice was, if social media is working for you, then you should stay. So, but if you don't like it, if it's not working for you, either because it's life draining or because you're just not getting the engagement or growth or sales or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish there. And again, I would ask, what are your goals? We identify 4 usually that writers are trying to accomplish on social media. It's either growth, nurturing your existing audience, building community, either writer to writer or with your reader, and then sales. And so those are usually the 4 things, 4.5 things that people are trying to, writers are trying to accomplish on social media. Yeah. So I would ask them, what were you trying to accomplish? And then I would try to figure out because a sales strategy is going to be different than a community building strategy. It's going to be different than a growth strategy. And so I would want to know that. But if you need a break, I would encourage you to take a break and gain a little bit of distance from the platform to find out what life feels like and what your writing life feels like outside of it. Because I have learned so much about just creating distance there is so powerful. And we offer a 7-day break, but we're actually going to extend that because I don't think 7 days is really long enough to feel what it feels like without social media. You're still having a lot of the withdrawal symptoms. It feels more painful than it does delightful. I would recommend it be at least 30 days. And if you can, do months. Like I took many breaks before I took my year-long break, but it was my year-long break that made me realize I do not need this. Like that was really the nail in the coffin for me is I do not. So I would encourage you to distance yourself from the platform for a period of time and pay close attention to how you feel off of the platform. And I just feel like it will give you a lot of clarity.
That's really interesting because I'm just back. I did a cruise and we were actually gone for about 12 days. And even though we had the ability to use Wi-Fi, we were so busy. We had so much going on that I was hardly, and I intentionally didn't do work at all. And so it's when you get away, it does give you that distance and perspective to really figure out how much it's impacting you. So I think that's really important. I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
Well, so if somebody does that and they decide this is not for me, I'm not coming back. You guys have both done that. So what would you recommend? Mary Kay, give us what advice you would give someone who's ready to just walk away. I mean, so much of our life is intertwined online. So how do you kind of disengage and what advice would you have?
Yeah. So it's good to just on the practical side. One of the reasons that I found it so difficult to leave social media is because it's, we get birthday invitations there. We have friends who post important information. It's a way to stay alert in your community. And so the first thing you're going to have to do is find replacements for those things or find what Sandy and I jokingly call a social media ambassador. Like my mother-in-law is mine. She's on social media. It does not bother her. She tells me everything that happens on social media. So like I don't miss anything. I have a new way of connecting with the school so I don't miss school alerts. And all of my friends, my kids' friends know they have to text Mary Kay directly to tell them about the birthday party or they won't show up. So just practically speaking, you kind of have to think through, okay, how am I going to get this information in other places? When it comes to writing, you really again, it's such a personal conversation. It's hard to have a general one about it, but you just have to think about what your goal is and what feels right to you to do. So we have a freebie. It's called 27 Real Ways to Grow Your Audience Without Social Media. And we can share that with you. And
that would be great.
Yes, it's just a list of 27 things that you can do that are not social media that help you get in front of your reader. We also have, I'm just going to offer this, we didn't discuss it, but we also have a quiz that we can link to. If you want to take it, it helps you, it will give you, well, let me back up. We offer 10 alternative pathways. We talk about 10 alternative pathways in our course that we offer. And this quiz, when you take it, it will tell you your top 3 pathways that play to your strengths based on your answers. So if you want to take our quiz, it will tell you the top 3 things the quiz suggests that you do outside of social media. So those are good places to start. And you can always, I just feel like quizzes are fun because you know immediately like whether or not those results fit you. And we've gotten good responses. People think they fit most of the time, but it's if you get that and you think that is 100% me, then you have some good first steps to keep moving forward on that.
Well, give us maybe 3 or 4 ways that we can promote without social media.
We have 3 heavy hitters.
Okay.
The biggest ones, and they're probably things you talk about here all the time, and we've alluded to all 3 of them already here on the podcast. One is public speaking.
Yeah.
one is podcasting and one is podcast guesting. Mm-hmm. Right now at the end of, as we're recording, end of 2024, if you're listening to this at some date in the future and podcasts are out, then this is not for you. But right now, because, technology constantly changes. And that's one of the things Mary Kay and I, even since we started Writing Off Social, we have changed some of our advice and where we point people outside of social media, because things were working even 2 years ago that aren't working as well now. Mm-hmm. And so, but right now, the biggest ones, if you can get live in front of an audience, it is one of the best. It's one of the hardest ways, but it's going to give you high ROI if public speaking plays to your strengths. Podcasting working really, really well right now. As you know, here we are on a podcast. Mm-hmm. And guesting, which is again what we're doing right now, works really, really well. And so those would be our three biggest ones. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of things that we would offer. I mean, the 27 Real Ways freebie lists 27. Then our course, we really zone in on the 10 most effective ones, depending on what goal you're trying to reach. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 heavy hitters really, no matter what you're trying to do, growth, nurturing, community, or sales, those 3 work really, really well.
I also wanted to ask you quickly about time saving, because I know that's something that you talk about on your podcast, that if you're not doing social media or you're cutting back, mm-hmm. it's going to give you so much more time back. So just what are your thoughts on that? And maybe if somebody's kind of, should I try this? Should I not?
Well, I'll just say that's one of our main lines, is that we want to help you find pathways that provide a better return on your investment. When you're on social media, you are investing a ton of time into that platform. When we left social media, the statistics were saying that people were spending an average of 2 hours a day on social media. There's even more if you're a content creator. Mm-hmm. And so we were asking the question to ourselves and then to our audience, what would you do if you had 2 extra hours a day? And, certainly you could be writing your book with 2 extra hours a day. But even for marketing purposes, if you spent 2 hours investing in a marketing strategy that provided a better return, because social media, engagement, you're maybe seeing 0.03% engagement on your posts that you share. And so to send an email has a much higher return on your investment. To public speak is also hugely helpful. So it's just a matter of what would you do with that time if you had it, and would it provide an even better return than social media is giving you right now?
Right. That's really interesting. Sandy, did you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I would simply say, Mary Kay and I talk about, after reading the book 10X is easier than 2X. Mm-hmm. We use that terminology a lot when she and I are speaking, and there's some strategies that will offer, a 2X return, and there are some strategies that offer a 10X return. And we encourage people, if your time is limited, go straight for the 10X return one. It would be better for you to get 2 amazing speaking engagements, or land yourself on a really big podcast and spend hours and hours and hours and hours going after that and getting 1 or 2 really big 10X opportunities, than it would be for you to just be cranking out, the hamster wheel of content creation on social media. You're just like cranking out, and it's just like creeping up. It's just a difference of perspective, because you feel like you're wasting your time because you're getting all these no's, you're pitching all these podcasts and no one is having you on. But if you get one, you can grow your email list by 500 in 1 hour. Yeah. Where if you're just, cranking away on social media to gain 500 people, and those are not even email subscribers, they're just followers, whereas you can grow in a much better, more sustainable way if you just know which pathway is the one that is best for you, because it really just depends on who you are and what your strengths are.
Right. Yeah. And if you have somebody on your email list, you have a connection with them. Yeah. Whereas social media, it's a little, uncertain. You may not have connection with them always.
They might not even be seeing your stuff. Like you might have them as a follower, or you might think it's actually a person, but it's a bot. Like I think the current ones are, I think the current stats are saying like 30% or something of the people who follow you are not actually people.
So I think we can agree we would have more time, more peace of mind, if we either cut back or got off social media. I mean, you guys clearly advocate for no social media unless it's working. But like, what can you expect the negative I know that I would have some negative repercussions just emotionally if I got off social media. So let's talk about that just for a second and how it can then translate into something positive, because I'm addicted. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I'm Jamie. I'm addicted to social media.
So were we.
Yes, we were 100%. And so what I would say is I went through a serious detox and I experienced those negative emotional repercussions that you discussed. Also, for me, leaving social media at the time was not just disconnecting from a social platform. It was disconnecting from my readers almost entirely because very few of them had converted to email subscribers. So it was like a loss. It was a gigantic loss when I left social media. Now, I did post that I was leaving and many people did follow over to my email list, but it wasn't everyone. And so I 100% yes, you are going to lose things when you leave social media. I think we would argue what you gain is far worth it. And the longer that you're away, the less you feel those repercussions. I mean, today I say often to people that the best decision I made was to leave social media. I feel freer. My brain feels clearer. I'm writing better and differently. And I am connecting with my reader in a more authentic and personal way. Here's the other downside. We have been speaking on our podcast. We have a friend who's in publishing and he said something, or we kind of took it away. I don't know if he said it word for word, but the idea is that, if you don't play the game that publishers put out there so often of you have to have a gigantic social media following to be traditionally published. Right. And if you don't play that game, then you may not be allowed to play the game. Does that make so? We cannot yet stand up here and say you can leave social media and turn right around to get traditionally published with no issues. You're still going to get pushback from publishers. However, many of them would gladly take a ginormous email list of engaged readers over a ginormous social media platform because they're seeing that those big social media numbers do not translate to sales, but email list numbers do. And so I guess the downside is you are taking a risk if you want to be traditionally published. And it's definitely the road less traveled at this point, but we're beginning to see a shift, and Sandy and I are hoping to be a part of helping the industry see that there are other ways to connect with our reader that, have a better return.
Right. They'd also take a book over a big social media following.
A very successful indie published book. Yeah.
Yes,
that's
100%.
Well, I mean, if you can just create a book instead of being on social media, which,
that's right.
That is my issue at times. So.
Well, I was also going to add, we've had somebody on the podcast who did a podcast called All About Agatha Christie. And he's now published traditionally. And I think part of the draw for him was he wrote a great book, but he has this huge audience of people who love the type of book that he wrote.
That's right.
So podcasting too has you have such a close connection with your listeners that can and if you can help people, if you want to be traditionally published, you can help them understand how influential podcasts are. That can also lead into that. It just is a different way because I don't think people think of them that way. But I think that's changing, especially with all the stuff around the election and the politicians going on podcasts now, where before they didn't very much.
I think that's what I would add is that there are other viable ways that our audiences, where you can build an audience and sell your book in its own right, where even since we first started writing off social, we used a lot of language around converting people to email subscribers and getting people onto your email list, where now I'm starting to realize that the podcast audience is an audience. and in its own right. I don't necessarily have to convert them all then over to my email list, because some people just prefer to engage with my content audibly rather than reading the emails that accompany each episode. And so, and then I can sell my books directly from my podcast. And people can find them. And I know this because this is actually what's happening. People find them 5 years later. They go back and listen to early episodes, and they're still buying the books that I talked about back in, the first year of my podcast. And so yeah, there are. And, I wanted to just commiserate with you a bit about your, social media addiction too, and just empathize that it took me years from the first moment that I thought, this doesn't feel good to me. This feels anxiety provoking. This feels life sucking. This doesn't feel good for my soul. Like, I started having those thoughts. It was years before I actually took that big, giant 2019 break.
Yes, that's such a good point.
And so I left in stages, and I started breaking away very slowly. And one of the best things that I did was, I made this, of course, giant pro-con list. I'm an Enneagram 1, so I'm like always with the pro-con list. And so everything I would lose if I left social media, because like you, I was like, I'm going to lose so much. And connection with people that I really care about and love, and I'll be out of the loop and all those things. Okay. And so I made this giant pro-con list. But one of the best things I did is right before I left entirely, I went through all of my actual Facebook friends. I had like 3,000. It took me weeks to do this. I went through each one. I looked at their profile. I asked myself, who are you? Like, do I know you? Why are we friends? If it was someone that I wanted to stay in touch with, I wrote down their name. And my goal was, I wasn't even going to get off entirely. I was just going to unfollow or unfriend everyone except for everyone on my list. But when I got to the end of that list, there were only about 20 people that I really wanted to stay in contact, like really. And I looked on my phone and I literally had all of their phone numbers.
Oh, that's funny.
And so I just thought, I don't need, I think a lot of the fear of taking that step off is that you think, I think you're fearing some things that might not actually be real, you know? And so I think you can give yourself a lot of grace and say, I can do this in little tiny baby steps. I don't have to just get off social media because Sandy and Mary Kay said get off social media. Like I can break in very tiny steps. I can also change my mind and go back. I might decide I love social media. And you know what? I reserve the right to say that too. If I want to go back, if they change the business model and make it not where they are collecting my data and they're putting ads in front and the algorithm is separating who I follow from what I get to actually see. If that whole business model changes, I would go back. And so we are not here to vilify social media as much as we are like, if you feel like you want to try something else, we are discovering a lot of beautiful and life-giving and I don't know, just things that work. Strategies that are, and you do free up the time. And like Mary Kay said, when you're away from it long enough, I sometimes, and I'm not joking when I say this, I sometimes forget that it exists. And then someone will mention something, did you see that thing on Instagram? And I'm like, oh, right. People are still on Instagram. Right. And I'm like, no, I didn't see it. I'm not on social media. And so, I just forget. And so there is life after social media. I promise.
There is. Well, thank you guys for being here. This has been so great. We really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find out more about you, about your courses, about your podcast, all of that.
Yep. If you go to our website, which is writingoffsocial.com, you'll find all the information about our courses, about the 7-day, soon to be 30-day challenge that we offer, and then also our podcast, Writing Off Social, the podcast.
Yes, we'll have all those links, and we'll put the link for the freebie and the quiz in the show notes. They'll all be in the show notes, and that will be at wishihadknownforwriters.com. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to that same link /support. So thank you guys for being here. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been so fun.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right.
All right. We will see everybody next week.